Hey, this is an episode today of the Market Report. We're going to start doing these every so often, Brian, and I think it's important that people understand what's going on, what is the pulse.
Right.
So we have, as realtors, we have some information, what is the pulse that's up front and present. And as we're looking right here today, I don't know if you can see my screen today, as in the last 7 days, let's go on this in the last 7 days, we've had 7,208 new listings.
Okay.
So there's a lot of real estate for sale.
A lot of action coming on. You know, for a while we sat there with nothing out there, and now we're starting to see a little bit more trickling in.
Well, I mean, people come in here and give these, they come in here and give these reports all the time and say, hey, this is the pulse of the market. But as an auctioneer, as an auction company, this is what we want to do. We want to look at some additional stats. And people are always talking about, hey, what's going on in the market? Is real estate really selling good? And that's when we can come down here, and this is a stat that we look at all the time. We look at back on the market properties.
That's right.
In the last week, 941 properties back on the market.
Sorry, but we're back.
Sorry, but we're back. So in your experience as a realtor, like I say, you got 36 years, right? How many years you been doing this?
36. Since 1989, whatever that is.
So since 1989, you've had your pulse on the real estate market.
I've seen a lot of markets go up. I've seen them come down. I've seen them stagnate. I've seen just about anything you can see out here.
So give us some highlights of some of the good times you've been in here since 1989. That's when the federal savings and loan debacle happened. Man, you got in at a good time or a bad time.
Right there. I remember back then, 9.5%, 10% interest rate was a good interest rate right there. And probably a couple of years before that, we were looking at 19% interest rates. And I can't even imagine that,
So fast forward to year 2000, what's going on? What do you remember about year 2000?
Well, I remember the market was humming along, and then we had a little thing called COVID-19.
No, that's year 2000.
Oh, 2000.
2000,
No,
not
2000 was doing fine, and then we had a little thing called that was kind of the start of the boom of all the internet. Everybody was going to get rich doing internet, doing this and doing that, and doing .com companies.
We're in the pregame show, so we're watching people register right before the auction. So that's what we're doing now. Hey, everybody, this is Nui Auctioneer. You just got an auction school, right?
Yes.
So tell me about auction school.
Well, we learn a lot. Something that we didn't expect to learn, to be like just an auctioneer, not just to be a professional auctioneer, but we actually learn how to become a better person in whatever field of career that you decide to do. You can use all that knowledge and experience that instructors have shared to adapt into your daily activities and the job that you're doing. So we've actually met a lot of people from different industry. Some of them were already in the industry of auction, and some would just like throw themselves out there. Me, I'm just new. I just started working with you like a month ago, and I'm understanding. I have a better understanding about our business right now, and practiced calling bid, and so it boosts my confidence in a lot of ways. Yeah, because I'm new to this, and it was beneficial. I love it.
Well, so here we have somebody who is when we say a professional veteran, been in the business 36 years, and we got someone who wants to learn about real estate auctioneers that is brand new, and then you got somebody stuck in the middle, okay? And that's me. Yesterday was 25 years anniversary.
Hey, congratulations.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
25 years. See, I got some flowers. Where's my flowers?
Where's the cake? I didn't see the cake.
We eat the cake. We eat the cake the other night at Bob's. We had strawberry shortcake.
Well,
So,
that's good.
25 years in the business, and my goal was to come in and see. I wanted to sell real estate at auction. Mm-hmm. I did not want to sell some of the other things, and I've sold everything from coon dogs, diamonds, farm equipment. Pots and pans. In the business, we call this precious metals. Precious metals is what's up under the kitchen sink and
Right.
what's in the doors and the drawers.
Right.
So we everybody does a lot of that. But let's get back on track here because we was talking about what happened in the year 2000, Brian. Was you with Remax at that time or?
I was with Remax at that time. Yes, I was.
Okay, so what was going on in the year 2000?
Oh gosh. Well, I tell you what, everybody was right before that. Everybody had the Y2K thing coming.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
right.
we thought
There you
all
go,
the
Y2K.
computers were going
Not
to
COVID,
crash.
but Y2K. They put another acronym on it.
All the computers were going to crash. Everything was going to go to hell in a handbasket, you know. But then, you know, we woke up the next day and everything was just fine, you know. And that's the way it is. So that was good.
Prince, he was singing 1999.
1999, it was over.
To the end.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I had been in the real estate business just a couple years, and you know what my big deal is that I did not like regular real estate.
Really?
I did not like regular real estate at all. It's like, man, what are we doing? And I went to an auction.
A lot of waiting around, isn't there?
A lot of waiting around,
Yeah.
showing houses. I can take you to the last house that I showed as a regular real estate agent in 1999, right behind the Mormon church off of 319 Tallahassee, Florida, a little subdivision called Foxcroft Subdivision.
Right.
And I bet I'd showed 15 houses that day, and it was like 9 o'clock at night, and this person's still looking at all these houses and I said, which one are you going to buy? Well, we're going to think about it. I said, they got to be a different way.
Yeah.
So I learned about real estate auctions. That is, that later on that year, I was exposed to real estate auctions, and then a good friend of mine, Harry Parmetta, passed away now, but Harry and I drove to St. Louis,
Right.
Missouri, to go to auction school. So when we got to auction school, I said, I'm going to sell real estate at auction. And that was my goal, is to sell real estate at auction. And then I had instructors said, because real estate auctions wasn't that popular back then.
Right.
They're like, well, if you're going to sell real estate at auction, you can hang that up because it's just not going to happen. So I had some great instructors, okay? Chuck Cumberland from Brush, Colorado, taught us how to sell land at auction.
Right.
Lance and Terry Walker from Memphis, Tennessee, they were the real estate instructors. And I remember standing in a circle, 5 now, 10 now, 15, 20, 25 now, 30, 35 now, 40. The cadence like Nui was talking about is, all the auctioneers learn that, but I was there to learn how to sell real estate at auction. Fast forward a couple years later, got with a great auctioneer, a pioneer in the auction business, everybody. A pioneer in the auction business. His name's Jim Gall. He wasn't scared to do nothing.
Where's Jim from?
Jim's from Miami, Florida.
Wow. Okay.
He grew up in New York. Him and his sisters moved to Miami. And I believe what he told me, and I believe I got this right, that he says his sisters put him into the auction business because he had the pizzazz, he had the personality.
Right.
You're talking about flamboyant. I'm telling you what, he'll stand up to, and he will just make things happen. And this is what really got me interested in what I do right now, is that Jim would leave Miami, go to Oklahoma City. The next week he'd be in North Carolina. He'd be in Herkimer, New York. He'd be Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Jim on tour.
Jim on tour. I want to tell you what, and not only that, he had several consigners that would consign fine art and bronzes, and his main goal was to sell that real estate, and that's what I was there learning how to sell real estate. So hands down, Jim was very influential in helping me set a mindset. And then a couple years later, got with a company called Rowell Auctions, and they sold a lot of land, a lot of farmland. And I'll tell you what, still one of when you talk about thriving auction companies, Rowell Auctions are still thriving today, and they're still selling a lot of lands. And then I started going to the National Auctioneers Association. I met a lot of other auctioneers, become a CAI, Certified Auctioneers Institute member, accredited auctioneer real estate. So fast forward 25 years later, here we are. We're sitting here doing webcast auctions via the internet.
We're sitting 5 miles from my office, or 3 miles from my old office, my old Remax office.
2000, how many transactions would you do a year in 2000?
Oh gosh, we were probably doing, just personally on my team, we're probably doing anywhere from 50 to 100. So, yeah.
So how many did you do in 2007?
That dropped quite dramatically, Myers. Yeah, drastically. I can't even remember.
How many-
Probably not enough to even eat.
What about 2008?
2008, still about the same.
Yeah, so
I remember we went to a award ceremony and we were sitting there and I was like, we're not going to get. We used to get awards all the time because we were one of the top teams in Texas, and I was sitting there, we're not going to get anything. And then they called. They always start at the bottom and get to the top. Well, we got the top award, and I leaned over to my mother at the time, who was my business partner, and I said, nobody else is eating. That's true, so that is true. So
I remember we were selling a lot of real estate on the Gulf Coast. I got my original license in Florida, so I was selling a lot of real estate on the Gulf Coast. And what was happening was real estate agents was hanging up their license,
yeah,
but constantly real estate companies was boarding up the doors. Now, we were taught.
That's 2008.
That's 2008.
Yeah.
I mean, we were taught how to work with banks, and not only banks was being bought out by banks, but real estate companies was just quitting.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have any business. So it's not as bad. It's not as bad now, but we see real estate agents who are getting out of the business now daily.
I had a conversation with the agent the other day, and she said, "Hey, I've got 22 listings sitting here doing nothing."
So let's fast forward,
Yeah.
Brian. I mean, this is a good segue to fast forward into where are we at right now?
Right.
2022. You know what? Nobody wanted to talk to the auctioneer. Real estate agents didn't need the auctioneer.
They didn't want to talk to the realtor.
But now it's like, okay, so let's get back into some data. Last week, 941 properties come back on the market. So when they come back on the market, what happens? What happens when a property comes back on the market, Brian?
What happens usually is something went wrong. Something went haywire in that transaction. Inspection didn't turn out right. The buyer didn't get the financing. Maybe somebody had an option period there and they terminated that option and it put it back on the market. I mean, there's a lot of little things. There's a lot of loose ends in that track 1 to 4. There's a lot of loose ends. Buyers can back out for just about anything.
So 941 deal or listings come back on the market because, and let's look at this number right here. In the last week, 2001 went into an active option contract.
Okay.
Now, let's do some cowboy math. Cowboy math is going to say almost 50% of those listings that went into an active option contract.
We'll be back on the market.
Well, they did. They come back on the market.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, because you got 900, you got 2,000, you got 900.
Yesterday that number was 1,949 with 999. So yesterday was 52%.
Right.
So we're going to start talking about this on a weekly basis and on a daily basis because it's important that people understand, okay, when you put your pulse, and this is what I'm leading up to, and this is why I think that you're sitting in this chair.
Where are we going, Myers?
You're sitting in this chair because you've seen 1989, you've seen 1995, 2000, 2005. So these are stages that you've seen.
That's right.
The good and the bad. What do you think, sitting here in this chair, about the program that I introduced to you? Lead us through that a little bit. How did we get introduced and what happened?
Yeah, Myers called me one day. I had a listing. It was over $1 million. Called me on it, and he said, "Hey, I'm an auctioneer. You ever thought about auctioning the property?" Well, I didn't know anything about auctions at the time, and I thought, nah, who's this? No, go away, And then fast forward a little bit, about a year and a half later, I was taking on a listing. I started doing my calculations, looking at the comps. We couldn't comp the house. I mean, it was a beautiful house. I mean, it was almost 10,000 square feet. I think it was around 8,000 square feet. He had done every little thing to it you could possibly do to it. He was asking 2.8 million, Myers, on the market, been sitting there. Nobody's even looking at it. He calls me, says, "Hey, Brian, I know you've been in the business a long time. What can you do here?" The first thing I thought of, is we need a process where the buyer can tell us what this house is worth.
Okay.
Because I couldn't get there. So I thought, Iris Jackson, he's an auctioneer. Let's call him and just see what happens. So I called you. We had a little conversation. We went out and met with the seller, and they said, hey, let's do it. And what happens in this process, I think over 2 weeks, you and your team put 500 people through my listing. And I was like, I've been doing this a long time. I've owned one of the top franchises. I was with another company that was coming on at the time and had agents working with me. And I was like, I can't do this. So I remember calling you one day and saying, hey, what do you think about me working with you, Myers? And I was like, hey, I was at the point in my career, I had owned a brokerage before, but I knew to go to the next level, I probably needed to own a brokerage again, but I didn't want to do that because it was the same dog and pony show. I had no power. My seller had no power. We had no way of doing anything but listing it, putting it at a price, and crossing our fingers and praying at night and hoping somebody came and made an offer on it, And I said, there's got to be a different way. And this way, this auction way is the way. People ask me all the time, they say, hey, what are y'all doing, foreclosures? I said, no. I said, we're not doing foreclosure. I said, if you had a priceless piece of art, priceless piece of jewelry, something expensive, how would you sell that? And they think about it a little bit and they say, well, we probably auction it. And I said, yeah, you call Christie's Auction House or something like that and put that up. And I said, why would you do that? And they said, they know where the money is and they know who's got the money, and those people are aware of that. And I said, same thing. Why wouldn't you take your most prized possession, which for most people it's their house, why wouldn't you take that and let the auction company do it? Because they can bring the buyers in. And I've seen that at time after time where we were able to bring the buyers in, And that's why I'm over here. And I told an agent the other day, I said, quite honestly, there's no way I could go back to traditional real estate now after I've been over here. This has got action. This has got moving parts. This is fun. We're having a good time.
You talking about moving parts. This is what auctioneers do. Mm-hmm. We're taking bids on the phone. We're taking bids on the computer. We're
That's
taking
right.
bids everywhere. And it's like, let's go back to 1985. Let me tell you what, you were shuffling a bunch of paper back then, or 1989, you was shuffling paper, right? 1995.
Yeah, you had fax machines. I remember if you wanted to go show a house, you had to drive over to that office, pick up a key, and go out and show the property.
So now what we're doing in this environment today is we've got a webcast going right here, so we can sit here and talk about it. We can monitor the bids. Mm-hmm. We're out here right now. We've got a top bid of $360,500 out on Wild Cherry.
Right.
So anybody can get online. Now we want some credible information. We want to know who you are.
Right.
Okay. We don't need any scammers.
Makes
Scammers
sense.
stay away. We just
Makes
don't
sense.
need any scammers. We're here to sell a piece of real estate. Mm-hmm. So we register people. Mm-hmm. We get their information. Their real estate agent registers.
Right. So
now,
we
if the
can
real
link,
estate
we
agent
can link
wants to
them
buy
up.
the buyer a house,
They can bid, right?
Can bid. However, for best practices, the real estate agents sign in for procuring calls rights. They're
Right.
the agent who represents the buyer. Their buyer signs in, and when the buyer signs in, the buyer can then make the bid. Okay?
And this isn't a long process. It's 2 to 3 minutes. 3 minutes max. I tell agents all the time, I said, hey, sign in so we can link you up with your buyer. Your buyer can link you up as the agent, and we come in and do that.
So walk me through what we're doing now is we're monitoring bidding. We're setting up for an auction in Fort Worth. So we have the ability to go from one property to another. This is
Right.
webcast. Literally, one day in Atlanta back in the day, sold 240 properties in one
gosh.
day.
Wow.
Live auction.
Wow.
So fast forward to what we're doing in here today.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, we can take this environment right here, working with real estate agents. Now, if you're a real estate agent,
Right.
and I want you to expand on this, Brian. If you're a real estate agent, think about what if you put your property in on Webcast Wednesday,
Right.
okay? And your property is right there. You're saying, well, there's a bunch of other properties that's going to be for sale that day. Exactly. How many people have got listings in the MLS? Let's look at it. New listings last week was 7,200. That's not the total listing.
Right. That's just last week.
So real estate agents have competition already. So what I want you to expand on this, how does a real estate agent separate themselves and to be at top of mind in the market? You got 7,000 new listings last week. That means there's a lot of old ones sitting there. Would you, as a real estate agent, Brian, would you want your property in the mix of, let's say, 10 or 12 properties that's going out on a webcast auction to millions of people this week? Okay. Last month, we sent out over 1 million emails to people telling them about these auctions.
That's right. Yeah.
Would you want that as a real estate agent?
Would I want that? Yes, I would want that all day long. I would want 1 million emails going out on my property. That's 1 million more eyeballs on my property. Coming back to the Webcast Wednesday, so what if we have 10 other properties on there? That's 9 other transactions or auctions where they've noticed your property. Maybe they didn't know about your property until they get in our webcast, and all of a sudden they're saying, hey, I was going to bid on this property, but hey, I think I'll bid on this property right here. It just 10X is the power of a realtor to use us as, a plan. I call it a plan B. It needs to be a plan A for them. It
definitely needs to be a plan
A. This is the new era. I mean, why do real estate the way you've always done it? I jokingly say you get into real estate, and the old Hotel California song, you get in but you don't get out. And we all kind of laugh about it, and we're just kind of used to sitting there, nothing happening. That's why I'm over here, because there's something happening every day. My phone rings and rings and rings all day long. So,
what's the lead quality of these individuals who is coming in and wanting to know about the real estate?
It's pretty good. I mean, for the most part, they're actual people that want to buy real estate, and they're looking for that. Most of them, sometimes everybody's looking for a deal.
It's their job to make a deal.
That's right. It's their job to make a deal.
It's our job. It's our job to find out where their deal position is.
That's right.
But the leads that are coming in, they click these buttons. So this is what we're doing now, just so everybody can see what we're doing now. Because when you say, hey, we're working the phones. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 phones up here. We got computers.
And I got another one in the back. We got all kinds of phones.
So we've got people who are wanting to know about these properties. All right. So people are wanting to know about these properties. I mean, I'm looking at one right now. I can tell who the current winner is. Now, let's get down to some bare facts about this.
All right.
We have people who call in and we walk them through a registration process.
That's right. Every day.
We number one, we give them the disclosures right up front.
Mm-hmm.
We name the terms and conditions right up front.
We are very transparent about everything.
And very clear. So transparency and clarity is huge in what we're doing.
And we're willing to help that buyer or that seller understand the process. I mean, I tell people all the time, call me if you got any questions. If you're unsure about everything, this is an easy process. It's nothing to be scared of. But call me. I'll walk you through it. It's not a big deal. And our staff will do that too. They're very good at that.
So by the time that a buyer goes through this process and they put a bid in, to me, that's a serious buyer.
Right.
I mean, that's a serious buyer.
Any bid is a serious buyer because they're serious about their bid. Yes.
Yes. And now, they may not bid what we always want them to bid, but however, what if they make a bid and that light goes green? We'll talk about this red light, green light in just a second. But what if they bid and this light goes green and we send them what we refer to as a memorandum of sale? Is that a good thing?
That's the best thing. right there.
I want to tell you what.
That makes my day. That gets me up every morning wanting to send out one of those memorandums.
If you're a real estate agent, just like Brian was, I don't know, a year and a half ago or whatever, and you had that listing, and if you have that listing, and it's just sitting there, and you are sitting here and you're brainstorming every day, how do we get more people? What do we get more people to look? How do we get more people to look?
You want an offer.
You want an offer.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you what. The offers that come in here may not be all that you're looking for, but if this person gets outbid, and yesterday this bid was only at, I can remember just a couple days ago that this bidding was down here less than $400,000. Well, today it's up just a shade over $500,000. So what is that telling everybody? So I'm going to preface this with a question. What is the number one thing back in 2022 that the real estate agents and the buyer did not know?
They didn't know what the other offers were.
And I want to tell you what.
And I'm telling you, Mars, I had 3 clients, and maybe more bid over, but I had at least 3 that bid $100,000 over listing price, which when I first started in real estate, I would thought that was the craziest thing I've ever heard of. And they had to do it to win the bids. But if we would have known what the other offers were, we might only had to bid $500, or we might only had to bid $5,000 to get the bid.
I ask people all the time, okay? Once again, we're registering people right here. We're walking through this process.
That's right.
Constantly this has happened. So we're registering some people right now for 2809 6th Avenue, all right? We're going to watch it. Reserve not met. We're going to come in here, and I'm going to just give a short brief on how to do this. We're starting the auction. So when we start the auction, that means that this auction is live. So you can come in, and so you're going to get right here on your phone. It's going to say enter the auction.
Right.
So you're going to enter the auction, and now we can tell who is in the auction, who is out of the auction. Go ahead and enter the auction. Y'all go ahead and do that on your phones. Let's get in on 2809 right now. So what's it? And I'm going to expand on what Brian was just saying. That real estate agents did not know what the last offers are. Now, if you're a buyer's agent and you are representing your buyer, would you advise your buyer to bid $100,000 more? And I say $100,000 because I heard some of those stories. Now, some of them might have been 10 or 5 or 15 or 25 or 30, but why would you entice your buyer to bid another $75,000 or $100,000 when all you have to do is know that you can bid $5,000 more? How do you know that, Brian? How do you know that right now?
Because I can see the last bid.
Where do you see that at?
I can see it on this Myers-Jackson
Look
bid
here.
right
Everybody
there
put up
underneath.
your phone.
You've got bid history.
Everybody put up your phone right here. You can see everything right here.
You got bid history right there.
Do you want to be clear on what's going on?
Yeah.
This is what we call transparency and clarity. Okay. So, I mean, when you're looking at your phone, Nui, what are you seeing on your phone? So you're new in this.
Yeah.
What are you seeing on your phone right now?
Oh, you can see the property. You see the bid right now. You see the current winner, the bid history, and you can message us when you have questions.
You can see the history. You can message us. There's terms and conditions of sale.
Seller's disclosures, surveys, everything.
You don't have to be uncertain. And I believe that a lot of people who are thinking that they're going to buy something at auction, they're uncertain. Okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? It lines this out for you right up front. I mean, this is transparency and clarity right at the top of the list.
That's right. I mean, it's all right there. I mean, we have frequently asked questions. We have anything you want to know, it's right there.
It's right there.
I mean, it's right there. Yeah.
So let's talk about when you first, Brian.
Yeah.
When you first seen a term called the buyer's premium. So let's just go back a couple years ago. When you first seen that term buyer's premium and there was an amount next to it, what did you think?
First of all, I thought, why in the world? As a buyer, why would I pay that? Because we all know the seller pays everything.
Oh,
don't
does the
they?
seller pay?
That's the perception I had at first, and then I started digging into it a little bit, and I realized the buyer's paying everything anyway. The buyer's bringing the money. Seller's just divvying it up a little bit. Buyer's bringing the money. And I've noticed with that buyer's premium, I mean, all of a sudden, even the seller can lower their reserve a little bit because, they're not bringing it out of their proceeds anymore. Buyer's bringing it in. It gets everything up front, and everybody knows where everything is. There's no guessing that way. So.
Well, I hear a lot of people say, well, we don't want to pay this, or we don't think that the buyer should pay this.
Right.
And I want to come back to what you just said, is that the buyer is bringing the money.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, going back to clarity and transparency. We're transparent because we're saying, here is this buyer's premium.
That's right.
You place that on top of your bid. So if you bid $500,000, you're actually coming out of pocket, let's just say 13%. This is today's auction. Let's go ahead and be transparent about this today. I'm required to be transparent about it. The buyer's premium is 13%. And you say, oh my gosh, there's just no way that we're going to do that. Well, let's just say on this property today, let's just say we have an appraisal at $950,000, and in reality, we've got an appraisal that is recent,
and we do have other properties and this property that are appraised high,
that are high appraised.
Yes.
This property that we're on today, it's $950,000. So why wouldn't you bid $500,000 plus the buyer's premium? Because you only got a total money. Now you got to pay you pay your closing cost.
That's right.
But that's $565,000. You got a property down here at $565,000. You've got a third party evaluation up here at $950,000.
Right. Is that a good deal?
Is that
is that a good deal?
Good deal?
In what world is that not a good deal?
So you say, wait a minute. I've just got outbid and somebody just bid $600,000.
Right.
Well, wait a minute. I'm coming back to cowboy math here now.
Yeah.
I'm coming back to cowboy math.
Let's go. Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be a good deal at $600,000?
It would all day long.
What about $700,000?
Hey, cowboy math. I'm still in the green on the deal.
So look here.
Yeah.
$700,000. $784 on a house that's valued in a great location. Valued right now. You can take that appraisal. Go down to the bank, and we'll talk about how cash or whatever in just a minute. But you can go down to the bank, and if you could borrow $950,000 and only purchased a house for $784,000, why wouldn't real estate agents tell that to everybody in this whole system?
It only makes sense.
It only makes sense. So, guys, this is what we're doing here. Is you want to make a good deal, but this is the kicker right here now. Now, this is one of the best things about this. What if you bid $650,000 and the seller said yes, sell it?
All of a sudden, they got a green light.
Now we got to.
Or I got to sell it. The sellers are watching these bids.
The sellers are watching everything.
That's what the sellers like about this process, Myers, because they're not waiting on the realtor to go, hey, I got these offers, and then we're going to come over tonight and go over them. No, they see exactly real time.
On the kitchen table.
This is what it. Yeah,
I'm going to send you a spreadsheet. You look at a spreadsheet. You know what the question is?
How much I'm going to get?
Yeah, how much you going to get? But is anybody going to bid any more?
Right.
Right here, you can see this real time. You can see real time offers.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how many times somebody bids. You can see the state that they're in when they're bidding.
That's even a problem with multiple offers. If I got 21 offers on a house one time during the multiple offer thing. You're sitting there and you have to go think, okay, what is the best offer here? Is it cash? Is it fine? What is it? So you weed out some of them and then you bring the rest of them. But quite honestly, there may be somebody, you may pick an offer, but there may be somebody else willing to pay over that and even over the one you picked, but you don't know that. But in this process, Myers, you always know that. You always know that. Everybody's got a chance.
You know the terms and conditions up front.
Yep.
people always ask us, is there this, or can I do an inspection? Yes, you can do an inspection. Come on
All day
out and do
long.
your inspection.
All day long.
We don't use an option period,
No.
but that's
But
fair,
it
right?
helps me bid. If I want to pay for an inspection, why wouldn't I pay for an inspection?
Just go ahead and do it. You know what's going on.
I know what's going on. Yes, somebody could outbid me in the next 5 minutes, but I'm going to take that chance. I know what's going on.
Like right now.
That's right. And
So-
it could. I always tell people, yeah, you can do an inspection, but somebody may bid while you're doing your inspection, and all of a sudden the light goes green, and are we going to wait on your inspection? No. We're going with the green light,
We're going to go with the green light.
Yep.
So I want to, so what was another misconception you had as a real estate agent? What just really dug in your craw, as the old saying say, what just dug down deep inside of you that says, you know what, I don't know about that process?
I think for a lot of people, they assume this is all cash,
Okay.
and we're only dealing with cash buyers, No, we don't care where you get your money at, If you got enough cash for the premium or whatever, hey, we're gonna work with you, We're gonna make it, and hey, we give you enough time to gather up the rest of the cash.
This is one of the coolest things about this entire process is I always say we do not dictate where you get your money.
Right.
We do not dictate. If you want to borrow it from Uncle Russell, Aunt Ruth, if you want to go down to the lender and get some money, one of the big deals is we just don't use a third-party finance and addendum. The seller don't want to sit there and wait 30 days for the buyer to say no.
Right.
This is another huge
Happens all the time.
activity.
Back on the market.
Okay?
Back on the market.
Back on the market, contingencies. The
right.
sellers are like, I know that I'm going to the closing table. The buyer knows that they make a good deal. So here's the consideration. Is the buyer says, hey, I'm going to only pay X amount of dollars. And the seller says, I'm going to accept because I know that you're going to close. You're going to close. The seller knows that. Okay? So the seller accepts the contract, buyer gets a good deal, seller's good with it. And a lot of times we close these out within the 30 days.
Right.
If you want to go down and borrow some money from the bank, okay, borrow some money from the bank. When you come to the closing table, all that the seller is doing is asking you to do what you promised to do to start off with. That's all it is.
Close the deal.
Just close the deal.
Yeah,
That's all
bring
you
the
gotta
money,
do.
close the deal.
And it's like, now, but what happens if somebody bids, I don't know, just a little bit more than you do? All right, what if that happens? What if somebody bids just a hair more? What can the buyer do?
Buyer can bid again.
So why would you bid again, Brian?
Because it may not take much more to hit that reserve or for that seller. That buyer may be tapped out. I don't know. And I'm in a bidding, I'm not going to call it a bidding war, but I'm in a bidding competition here with the other bidders. I have to analyze and say, hey, how bad do I want this property? And is this still a good deal? And quite honestly, all our properties are good deals. You just bid another round. And I don't know what the seller might take either. I don't know. They may be watching and say, you know what? I like that bid right there. Let's go with it. And they can do what we call bid matching. They can bring their reserve to wherever that bid is and match it.
That's right. The seller's always got a question. What is the highest bid?
That's right.
They can see it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't move, that's when that bid matching is activated. And when that bid matching is activated, it becomes golden.
That's right.
Because the seller is saying, I will take it. So in other words, if you're a buyer and you don't have your bid in here, you're behind the game.
You don't get a chance of the seller saying, I will take it. You never know what is going to win the bid. So why not bid another $100? Why not bid another $500? You never know. You're right there. We've had people at the auctions going, God, if I could have got it for that, I should have bid again.
So let me ask you this from the standpoint of you being a real estate agent.
Okay.
You represent the buyer. Assume, let's just
Say I'm representing the buyer.
You represent the buyer.
Yep.
why wouldn't you encourage your buyer to pay another $1,000 or another $2,000?
I would.
So let's uncover some gorillas. That's when they say the gorilla's in the room. Okay, the elephant in the room, or whatever it is. There's other companies out there who push leads.
Right.
All the time. They're pushing leads. They're pushing
Right.
leads. They're pushing leads. Well, what happens is the consumer comes in and clicks that button and says, "Hey, I want a real estate agent." And some of these companies got a great system worked out to where they're procuring the lead. They click the button and then they partner with other real estate agents. And that real estate agent on the ground comes out and they say, "Hey, here's a property." And it's at auction.
Right.
This is an auction property, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Are they selling it for this price? And sometimes they're like, okay, well, we don't know what's happening here, but we see a starting bid of, I don't know, $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. Mm-hmm. And they click because they want to know about that property.
Right.
You're a real estate agent.
Right. And
Would
I've got the buyer, right?
The buyers come to you and said, "Hey, Brian, there's a house. I can see it out there. It says $100,000. Mm-hmm. What would you do if you represented that buyer?
I would call the listing agent, because I get these calls all the time. I say, "Hey, is this house really $75,000? Is it really $50,000? Is it really $100,000?" And I say, a lot of times I say, "Did you read the remarks?" And in the remarks, it plainly states, because again, we're transparent. We're not trying to trick anybody or anything. We're I said, we are an auction company. This is an auction. What do you think your buyer's willing to pay for it? And I said, yeah, go show it. I said, see what they're willing to pay for it. I said, I'm going to send you a link. I want you to send me your email address, and you guys sign up on there, get registered, and then once you're registered, let me know, and let's go look at the property. Go show them the property. Real easy. Takes all of 2 minutes of your time to do what I just said.
And if you're a real estate agent,
Yes.
and you're saying, "Oh, well, that's an auction, you'll never win it." Is that good advice?
That's wrong advice. That's like saying, "Hey, don't even put an offer in on a house." You never know what that seller will take for a house.
You don't ever know.
You don't know.
Yeah, and this is how this process.
They might take $50,000, Myers.
You know what?
Don't know.
They may take $100,000 less than that's published in that MLS.
That's right. That's right.
Now we prove that all the time.
We do.
We bring these properties to the market, and what we're doing is we're bringing a buyer and a seller together in offers, and it's like, let's go back to 1985 when we was transferring paper.
That's right.
I wasn't transferring the paper in 1985, so let's get in here.
I watched people transfer paper, let me tell you.
Let's get in here into 2005 when people were transferring paper.
Right.
All right? And it's like, well, I don't know if they're going to take it or not, stay up until midnight doing all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But now all you got to do is just see the interaction online.
We can see it. We can act immediately on it. People don't have to wait 24 hours to see what happens, I mean, as an agent, I worked with a buyer the other day and I put in an offer. And I didn't hear from that agent it was 2 days, and our offer was pretty good, and I thought, what's going on here? Well, they didn't tell me they had other offers there, so we never got a chance to come back around.
So you didn't know that there was another. You didn't have a second chance.
No, we didn't have a second chance, and then this way, I'm like, why wouldn't you do this? You got a second chance. You see what it is. Even if somebody meets the reserve, Myers, and we got a couple of bidders that really want the house, what are you going to do then? How do you handle that situation?
Well,
let's say they meet the reserve, but let's say I'm bidding too, and I want the house, and I can keep bidding. I mean, do we run a little clock there maybe and just say, hey, it's
so this is what
winner
can
takes
happen.
all.
this is what can happen. Okay.
Yeah.
So the way this system is set up and designed is that everybody can see what's going on. Comes back to transparency. Clarity is the numbers that's happening.
That's out there. I know.
So you don't if you want to come in here and put in a big number that's $100,000 more, you can do that. This is called a max bid.
Okay.
You say, hey, I know it's worth $600,000, but I'm going to pay $7. All right. So what happens is your max bid feature works, and if somebody bids $610,000, the system's going to bid automatically for you.
Okay.
And
they
ask
don't,
the
they
other
don't see
person
my max bid.
620.
Yeah, okay.
They're not going to see your max
No,
bid.
it's just bidding for me.
And now that stops.
Okay.
Now this is good for the buyer, because the buyer is saying, well, if I can get it for $650, that's all I want to do.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But if I have to pay $700, I will. But I don't want nobody to know that.
Right.
The system doesn't tell everybody
Right.
that. Okay.
Right.
However, if it gets into the bid increments, and the bid increments go up to I don't know,
675.
675,
Shuts down.
and it shuts down, then the seller sees that. And that's when the seller can bid match.
Right.
The seller can say, hey, my reserve was $1 gazillion.
Right. Right.
I wanted all this money. But reality says that we're only able to produce this much
I've watched
in the
bidding for a
marketplace.
few days, a week, whatever it is, and it's
This is the marketplace.
It. Yeah.
We have 67 people that's participating in the auction. You can see all that as a seller. You can see
Right.
all that as a buyer.
Right.
So now once you look at that and say, wait a minute, the bidding's starting to slow down, all I want to do is bid just a little bit more.
So you're telling me, what I'm hearing you say is, I put my max bid at 700. Let's say the bidding stopped at 775, and the seller says, "Hey, I'll take 675," and the seller says, "I'll take 675." Is that all I'm paying as a buyer at that point?
Well, you're going to pay the buyer's premium.
Right. I mean, my premium, yeah, the buyer's premium.
That's your
yeah,
bid.
Right. That's my bid.
And if the seller takes it, then we're done.
Right. So I, in essence, got a good deal.
You got a good deal. So
Because the seller
while
took less than what my max bid was.
So we're
right?
going to transition a little bit. It's 12:03, guys.
Okay.
We're going to switch to the next auction. Give us a couple minutes. We're going to start live streaming over here at Fort Worth, Texas. We got a good one going on over here.
Let's
I guarantee
go.
that. now.
Hey, this is a great house.
I'm the auctioneer, people like it that way.